I thank the gentlelady from Florida and now recognize myself for 5 minutes to give an opening statement. During today's hearing, the Select Committee will examine the critical role that physical infrastructure plays in both being a conduit and, at times, a barrier to inclusive economic growth. The story of the last 2 centuries in this country is really remarkably telling. We have seen time and time again a remarkable mixture of public investment and private investment that has built out the infrastructure today, going back to George Washington helping build the C&O Canal at the country's birth, to the expansion of canals, to the subsidization of railroads in the mid and late 19th century. We developed sewage and water systems in the late 19th and 20th centuries with remarkable effects on the health of American citizens. We built and expanded ports, factories, airfields, and shipyards during World War II. We also built an awful lot of affordable housing immediately after World War II, which remains used today. Of course, the 1950s was an era in which we made highway construction and the expansion of the highway system, a national highway system, a national priority. And we helped fund the early basic research that led to one of our most important pieces of infrastructure, that is to say the internet, in the 1980s and 1990s. All of these infrastructure projects have been key to our national prosperity. That's not arguable. What is very, very interesting is the fact that each one of those things was, in many cases, a combination of public and private investment. It is also true that much of this investment was done, certainly in the 1950s and earlier, in a way that advantaged some Americans and disadvantaged others. Just south of my district, I get to Washington, D.C. by going across the Cross Bronx Expressway. It's convenient for me, but it absolutely devastated that neighborhood, which was a rich and vibrant neighborhood. That's what I see. There are obviously stories like this all over the country. So today we'll discuss how some past policies have negatively impacted certain communities and led to the marginalization and actually the decrease of opportunity associated with those infrastructure projects, and try to learn from those mistakes so that the investment we make in the future is more inclusive in terms of prosperity. And as is customary in this Select Committee, we'll identify practical solutions and best practices to build smart 21st century infrastructure to help every American reach their full economic potential. In the depths of the Great Depression, Franklin Delano Roosevelt designed a public works program, quote, to put more men back to work, both directly on the public works themselves and indirectly in the industries supplying the materials for these public works, because, quote, no country, however rich, can afford to waste of its human resources. Nearly 90 years later, amid a global pandemic, President Biden and on a bipartisan basis, the Congress of the United States has an opportunity to follow in FDR's footsteps with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. In doing so, we can contribute meaningfully to the future prosperity of every American, and I do mean every American. With that, I will conclude my statement and recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes of opening remarks.